all have. And it's a wonderful opportunity, I hope, for us to come together and not only look at some of those challenges, but to also look at some strategies or some tips or some ways that we can address them. As Jessica also said, I do welcome questions and feedback and comments, any concerns, anything. So please type those in and we will get to them at the end of our time together. And so during this time together, we will review some information. Particularly, we're going to focus on the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves in all areas of our lives. What we find is this, that we are whole beings, that there's so many layers and facets of our lives that we need to address or consider addressing all of those areas in order for us to be complete with our coping process. We also find, especially during this time, during the holidays, the intensity level as caregivers increases. So we're going to also talk about that a little more. So we'll look at stress and we'll look at the areas of stress. We're also going to explore, well, how does that impact us? And how does it affect our lives when it comes to our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being? We'll look at how it affects each of those areas. And then we'll also take a few minutes to have an opportunity to go within and explore our own levels of stress. Some that are known, but some that are also unknown. And then we'll identify ways to cope with that. And then hopefully we will come up with ways to create a plan, whether that be a plan that we do during our time together or a plan at your own time when you are able to sit and be still and concentrate on that. So why even look at stress or study stress? Well, the recent data shows that 20% of Americans are living with extreme stress. And if you note, the term is extreme stress, and we'll explore that later. And then 72% believe that their stress has increased or stayed the same in the past 5 years. So we're going to explore now the known, but also the hidden stressors. So the top source for caregiver stress, for some, it's not too surprising that it is money. Money rates as high as 69% when it comes to stress level. And when we ask why, when I say we, as Jessica said, I am a chaplain. I'm also a bereavement manager with VITAS Healthcare, which is a hospice agency. And when I'm with caregivers, whether it's one-on-one or doing support sessions, money comes up a lot. And questions come up revolving around money, such as, how am I to pay for what I need? What finances, what resources do I have in order for me to provide? And then the next thing that comes up is work. Of course, the economy, what's the state of the economy in, because that affects the money. And then the family responsibilities. I am a caregiver, yet I have so many other people who need my time, my attention, my care. How do I juggle all of that? How do I take care of that? And then when we add other relationships and health issues and personal issues, all of those areas affect caregivers and their stresses. And now there's the coronavirus. Because of COVID, we have adapted, or at least trying to adapt, a new way of living, a new way of being. We find ourselves trying to adapt to, what is my life now? It's changed so much, and it's not as I know it. So this new normal, how long is this new normal going to last? Some say it was only supposed to last a few months. Then we had some sense of hope, thinking, well, it's going to be to the end of the year. And now we're hearing, based on the latest research from the CDC, that we might be actually looking at a full year of this, which would put us into March or April or maybe even longer. Well, all of those things add to caregivers' stress. And now it's the holidays. We find that right after, Halloween, typically people get excited because now it's time to celebrate the holidays. And that usually indicates togetherness time. And no matter what your tradition is, whether it's the ones that are listed on your screen now or not listed, there comes expectations with the holidays. And those expectations is, well, we're supposed to be happy. I mean, after all, I'm gathering, whether we're using COVID precautions or virtually or on the phone, it's supposed to be a time of joy. Holidays are special events. They're memorable. We make it our own. We make it our own through either our religious traditions and celebrations or whatever family connections and ties that you have. Because with those comes power of the tradition. Think about the times that you have gathered with family or friends who are like your family. Think about what that means for you, those feelings that rise up and emerge when you're gathered with your family during the holidays. They're rooted. They go from generation to generation. We often refer back to them. Remember when we did this at Thanksgiving? Oh my goodness, do you remember when my aunt came and how it was so exciting? And so we tend to pass that on from generation to generation, from holiday to holiday, and we tend to add those as special memories. Yet, for caregivers, it can create stress because things perhaps are not as they were a year or 2 years. As you recall, when I first started, I said, it was 70% over a 5-year time span before people realized that they were really experiencing stress. So what was before may not necessarily be now. And so why look at stress? Well, because in your role as a caregiver, the better the care you give yourself, the better you're able to provide care to your family, your friends, and others, but also the happier and the more peaceful that you are. So let's look at stress. What is stress? Well, stressors are those external events or conditions that affect the body. And again, some are known and some are unknown. And it becomes the result of the demand on your body. And sometimes it is manifested in the form of anxiety, conflict, pressure, strain, worry, or tension. Think about when you have experienced stress, or when you do experience stress, or you're around someone who is feeling stress. Think about how the behaviors, the mannerisms change. All of a sudden, they just don't seem to be their usual or normal self. And stress often results in one of 3 physical responses. So one is fight. Fight usually manifests this way. I am resilient. I can do this. I can handle this. I mean, after all, it's my duty, it's my obligation as a caregiver. Yep, I got this. Another response can be flight. Nope, I don't want to do, I can't do this. I can't handle this. I just need to go. I need to get away from this. The one that we see most common is freeze. Freeze is usually manifested in the form of numbness. I'm just going through the motion, and I'm not feeling what I'm doing. I'm just doing. Well, what I want to make sure we all understand that stress is neither good, it's not bad, it just is. See, we have to be careful when we start labeling stress as good or bad. Because if we say stress is good, that may cause us to act one way or perceive it one way. But if we say it's bad, that might cause us to look more poorly or down upon ourselves because we feel like, well, perhaps I failed in this area. Perhaps I'm not doing it, I don't know, as well as I thought I was. So please know and please understand that it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. The key is to understanding what stress is and how it affects us so we know how to cope. I mean, after all, there is no such thing as a stressless free life. So what you have on the slide now is actually the model of stress. And it looks jumbled because, well, stress is jumbled. We have these external and internal. So external are those demands that are outside of ourselves, so to speak. Our family, our environment, finances, work, school. The internal are those things that we place upon ourselves. It is my responsibility. It is my obligation. I don't know if it's too surprising or not that women tend to at least verbalize feeling stress more than men. On a scale of 1 to 10, 5.3 women, so more than half of the women that were interviewed in this study at least admitted having stress. 23% reported extreme stress. 43% reported that their stress level has increased. Now, I think the difference between extreme stress and stress increases once there's the recognition, the realization of, wait a minute, I am feeling stress. Because of that recognition, the increased level occurred. So the men were at 4.6. Rather than the women with 23%, the men reported 16%, and 33% reported that their stress level has increased. So what happens when we have difficulty coping and managing stress effectively? It's like a juggling act. Because again, stress impacts our whole body, our whole being. It impacts us physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. The physical. And as you hear this, as you read this, I ask you to be mindful of where you are as we go through each area. So the physical. The physical is often manifested in the form of headaches. We have headaches and we're not sure why. Sometimes caregivers will say, it's my allergies, Or it's my sinuses, it's the change in the weather. And I asked them to look at, well, how often is this occurring and when does it occur? Is it while you're in the midst of actively caring, doing something hands-on, or this when you're still? After a long day or after many hours, are you getting headaches at that time? It's also manifested in the form of high blood pressure. Shortness of breath. Shortness of breath is one that sometimes is minimized because people will say, well, I'm just out of shape, Von. You know, it's been a while since I've exercised or done anything. I'm just out of shape. And I ask us to look at, well, how often is this happening? Because this is not necessarily about being out of shape. Stomach problems, caregivers will have gastrointestinal issues. They're not able to eat or digest food and drink the way they normally do. That they feel nauseous when they're eating. Back pain also occurs because we tend to literally carry our stress. And as a result of carrying the stress, sometimes we can have the neck pain, the back pain, and fatigue. Fatigue often is manifested in the form of, I just can't seem to get enough sleep. I just feel tired all the time. So I ask you, where are you on this list, if at all? So now we're juggling the balls, right? The first one is the physical. And now we've got another ball thrown at us, and that's the emotional. So the stress that caregivers feel can cause an emotional experience for us. Just angry. I'm angry that I'm doing this. I'm angry that I have to do this. I'm angry at myself. I'm angry because I don't feel like I'm doing this right. I'm angry because I want to do more and I just don't know how. And anger can turn into frustration, that it could turn into irritability, feeling sad or depressed. I don't know. I just don't see any light. I'm having a really hard time. And so sadness, depression, very common, yet it can be addressed. Being anxious or fearful, I hope this is right. I hope I'm making the right decision. Loneliness. We hear so often in our ALS support meetings that it is a lonely disease, and I would say that's true. Yet there's support that's there. So please understand that the loneliness, is there, but you've got some great support to help you through that.
Okay, I'm back.
Negative is when it's just challenging, it's just hard to just be happy and to feel peaceful. Now, ironically, guilt tends to come up when it's, oh man, I hope I'm doing this right. I'm not doing this right. And then we begin to beat ourselves up because we place these high, unrealistic expectations on ourselves as caregivers to get it right. Oh, and there's another ball thrown at us. So we've already had the physical, we've already had the emotional, and now, the mental. So caregivers who are experiencing stress, sometimes they experience forgetfulness. We get up to do something and then we don't remember why we got up. Oh, I need to read something. Oh, wait a minute, did I read that already? We find we're struggling with concentrating. We're trying to read something and it's just not sinking in, it's not making sense. But wait a minute, I've read this so many times before, it's just not making sense for me now. There's also difficulty in making decisions. What do you want for dinner? I cannot even think about dinner right now. Let's go for a drive. I don't know where I want to go. So the things that used to seem easy and very simplistic are not now when we're stressed as caregivers. Disorganization occurs a lot as well, too. Disorganization, that often looks like I put something down somewhere, I don't know where it is. Or we feel like our life is just scattered and messy. Worrisome is another one. We're worried, we're fearful, and it begins to consume our mind. The occasional worry is absolutely normal, but when worry begins to consume our mind, then we know we need to address that. It's a constant state of worrying. And the mind racing. Mind racing is similar to the not being able to concentrate. It's where our mind just darts from one thing to another, to another, to another. And then we have the next ball we're trying to juggle, and that's the spiritual. So a lot of religions, faith practices, spiritual practices have a source or a sense of meaning. And these are actually just a few. There are quite more than that. If you notice in the center, it's the golden rule. Most faith practices have some form of the golden rule. And the golden rule is simply this: you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So from a spiritual perspective, as a caregiver, I am to treat you the way that I want to be treated. And again, we begin to struggle with that because if I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated, then there's the pressure. I got to do it right. I got to do it well. But yet with that comes a lot of questions. The one I hear a lot is, where is God? Vaughn, why would God allow this to happen to me? Or Muhammad, or Allah, or Buddha, whatever your faith practice. So we begin as caregivers to question our higher power, our creator. We want to know why. What's the reasoning behind all of this? And we begin to examine our relationship with God or the creator or the higher power. It's a lot. And all the balls are up in the air and we're trying to juggle it all. We're going from the physical to the mental to the emotional to the spiritual. And yet we wonder why we're so stressed or overwhelmed. Again, if you look at it, the women tend to report a higher number of these symptoms. I will say from my experience, whether it's doing a support group or talking to people one-on-one, the women tend to more freely disclose or share. So I would say the men's statistic is probably higher than what was self-reported. But if you look at the one that's experienced the most, fatigue. I just can't get enough rest. I'm just tired. I'm tired of being tired. And I'm going to pause a moment so you can see that. What would you think would be one that's also experienced the most, but perhaps not reported by neither women or men? And I will tell you, it's feeling depressed or sad. Because society says we are not to feel depressed, we're not to feel sad as caregivers. It's our obligation, it is our duty. So what happens when we don't address stress and all of these different factors that are happening within and around us? Well, it can result in unhealthy behaviors. 25% acknowledge that they just overeat or they eat unhealthy foods. There is something about comfort food. I mean, we all have our comfort foods, right? We all have something that we could just turn to that just, oh, it may not be the best, but it just feels so good when we eat it. For me, it's ice cream. I can have a horrible day, but oh, you give me some ice cream and whew, my day is better. Now, if I'm eating a pint of ice cream every single day, then I would say I'm not coping too well with stress. Is there anything in here that's ringing true for you? Skipping a meal. Skipping a meal is very common. I'm too busy to eat. I'm just too busy to eat. That, or I just don't have time to eat because I have so much to do. Alcohol is another, because alcohol, as we know, can be a numbing effect for some people. The one that's actually increasing, it is the highest one that's listed here. I would say it's increased more, is the computer. Especially now because of COVID, we're not able to go out and socialize as much, so we're on the computer. Now, computers within themselves is not bad. But when the computer and the games and all of that becomes our world to where we're actually obsessing over it, then that becomes a concern. So why don't people address their stress levels? Why don't they cope or try to cope or figure it out? Well, 31% is the lack of willpower. I like to rephrase that and say, rather than the lack of willpower, the lack of awareness of the need to change. 22% is the lack of time. I just can't do that. I don't have time. I have so much to do. Some, remember, the very beginning, I talked about finances, money being a major concern. Some say, I don't want to spend the money to do what is necessary in order to create a change. 12% said it's actually the stress themselves that's stopping them from making those positive changes. So again, no wonder there's a heaviness in some cases for caregivers. I mean, look at all the ways that stress can manifest in our lives. And I invite you now to take a moment to look at this and see what jumps out, what rings true to you. Notice the things that are obvious for you: the headaches, infections, fatigue, irritability, insomnia, drinking, negativity. What is the supposed obvious for you, but I also invite you to look at it and see if you notice anything that you were not expecting to be on this list that you have been experiencing. So let's take a moment now and let's look at where we are when we look at our own level of stress and how we're coping. I like that this is a virtual format because you have the ability to be honest and as true as you choose to be. If you have pen and paper handy, feel free to get that now, or we'll pause for a moment for you to get that. Because I'm going to ask you some questions, very basic, simple questions. And I invite you to, again, go deep within yourself and answer the questions. And it's just yes or no to the questions. So if you have pen and paper ready, I'm looking and I see people getting them. Awesome, wonderful. I see you. Awesome, thank you. Yes, Curtis, I see you. Again, the ability to cope with stress depends on us being honest within ourselves. One of the statistics says there was even a lack of awareness of even being stressed. So the first battle, really, and I don't even want to say battle, the first hurdle is I need to look deep within myself to see whether or not I really am stressed. So here we go. Here are the questions if you're ready. All you're going to do is answer yes or no. So the first one is, do you take time for yourself each day? Now, don't overthink it. Don't overanalyze it. It's just yes or no. And this is for you. Nobody's going to see this but you. So do you take time for yourself each day? That's question number one. Question number two. Are you doing work or hobby or something that you love? I mean, you really love it. It's your passion. When you do it, you just get so excited. It brings you so much joy. Are you doing work or hobby you love? Okay, the next one. Number three, do you give daily care and attention to your relationship with your partner, your spouse, your child, your children, your dearest friend? Now, I will say that the key word here is daily care, not the occasional, but daily. Number four, are you making more money than you spend? Are you making more money than you spend? Number five, do you take time to plan and set intentions every day? Not once in a while, not, when you get to it, but every single day. Do you take the time to plan and set intentions? Number six, do you spend as much time with your family and friends as you would like? Are you calling them as much as you want to? Are you seeing them? Are you visiting them as much as you would like? Number seven, do you schedule open time every day? So open time means that's your time that you do whatever you want. There's no obligation, there's no responsibility. Open time means as things come up, as you feel like doing something, you're going to do it, and it's during a certain time every single day. Here's a big one. Number 8, are you exercising as much as you like? Are you eating as well as you like? 9, do you play? Do you play daily? Do you just have fun? Number 10, as a caregiver, are you taking off at least 1 to 2 full days each week? Now, I know 2 full days for some is a stretch, but are you taking off? Off meaning, I had one caregiver describe it as being off duty. So are you off work? Are you off caregiver mode? At least 1 time a week? Do you have a place for everything and everything in its place? In other words, does it seem kind of scattered for you right now, or do you feel like, well, no, I'm good. I'm good, upset. And then the last one, do you have support with tasks you dislike or don't do well? Do you have support? Do you have someone? Do you know someone? Do you know how to get some help? Do you have support with tasks that you dislike or don't do well? So what I'd like for you to do now is you have 12 yes or no responses. Go ahead and total all of your yes answers. And we'll pause for a moment. Go ahead and total. So you should have 12 answers. Go ahead and total how many of your yes responses you have. What'll help me is if you can kind of nod at me or wave so I know that you are done, because I don't want to move too fast. I see you, Curtis. Thank you. And Terry, I see you, Terry. Awesome. Jackie, okay. All right, are we ready? Here we go. Where are you on the stress and coping steps? So if you said yes at least 10 to 12 times, that says, I'm highly effective. I'm aware that I have stress, but I'm coping. If you have 7 to 9 yeses, then you're living a balanced life. That means you're aware that you are having stress and you're coping, but you have your outlet, you have your tools, you have what you need. If you said 4 to 6 yeses, then that means you're feeling strained. 1 to 3 is caregiver extreme, which means perhaps I'm not doing as well as I thought I was doing. I will tell you that most of the time, a good 85 to 90% of the people will fall between the caregiver extreme and the strained. Are any of you surprised at where you fall within this range? Did you perhaps think you're doing better? Or are you right about where you thought you would be? So now it's like, well, what do I do with all of this information? So again, 10 or more yes answer means you probably sleep well at night and you just kind of glide through your days. You're able to reconstruct or design your life as things come. So basically, as things come, you have the skills, you have the tips, you cope with them. 7 to 9, it's recommended that you look at 1 or 2 of those areas that you have the no answers, and then begin to make choices that will strengthen those areas. And utilize resources, whether it's support from a friend, a colleague, a peer group, most definitely the ALS Association. 4 to 6, you're probably aware that you're taking on a lot of stress. And you may want to consider that it's time to make some changes, that you need to make some changes. You may want to consider, in addition to the resources that are available through the ALS Association, you may want to consider some professional support from a counselor to help you with that. 1 to 2 yes answer, that's the caregiver extreme. That's a clear indication that you are not coping well. Perhaps you thought you were, but now you're realizing, as we looked at the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, now perhaps you're realizing, wait a minute, I'm really not coping as well as I thought. And perhaps it's time for me to make some tough choices. Now, I will tell you, the people who tend to fall in the 1 to 3, the caregiver extreme, this is when they start thinking about what they need to do and why it's difficult for them to make those tough choices. Such as, perhaps I need to admit I need more help, and I probably need to hire someone to come in and just help me, a home health aide or just another agency, a caregiver. Perhaps I need to take a look at what I have committed to. Because, see, we tend to fill our days with the busyness of life. I have to do this, I have to do that, people need me, people depend on me, that we overlook our own needs. So the people who fall under that highly strained or the caregiver extreme level of stress, I ask them to look at, what are you committing yourself to do? And to make that tough choice of saying, you know, not now. Not now. So again, where you took your notes or you tallied it up, feel free to write down where you are on the stress and coping steps, whether you are highly effective or balanced or strained or caregiver extreme. And then what I want to say is, please do not beat yourself up. Do not look upon yourself as defeated. Sometimes when we actually go internal and honestly assess where we are and what's going on, as I said earlier, the guilt, the setting the high expectations and the burden of that can be too much. Know that I appreciate your honesty in acknowledging where you are, because now we can do something about it. So how do we get there? How do we get into the coping skills? Now that we've identified how all of these internal and external factors can affect and impact our lives, how do we get to addressing cope? I put in red, practice self-care. Because see, self-care truly is a practice. It is something that is done regularly. It is something that is, quite frankly, done on a daily basis. It is a practice. So one of the ways to cope as caregivers is to talk to someone. Talk to someone, allow them to be in the space with you. And I don't necessarily mean the physical space, but the space of your being. Talk to someone and share with them, this is what I am feeling. This is what I am experiencing. Because there is a release that happens when we do that. I will caution you, though, and ask that when you choose to talk to someone, please let it be someone that is going to be supportive, not judgmental. Sometimes we go and we share our feelings and what we're going through with people, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but sometimes people will go and talk to someone and they feel worse than they did before. So be wise as to who you talk to and who you share your experiences with, because my hope is that you find someone that not only is someone you can trust, but also someone who is not going to pass judgment upon you and tell you what you should do and how you should do it, but rather someone who will understand what it means to be in your space and in your way of being at the moment. The next one is to let people know when you need help. Oddly enough, society has set it up in a way, or set us up in a way, that it sends this negative message when we say, I need help, and we ask for help and we ask for support. Yet, I think it shows a sign of courage. I think it shows boldness to admit, this is bigger than me. This is outside of me. I need help. And then be clear, be specific as to what help is needed. Remember, I said earlier, in our minds, we have so much going on and thoughts and everything racing in our minds. Mind racing, one of the big ones. Make a list. What do I need help with? And don't worry about if it's just a little thing. No, the little things add up. And so make that list of, I really can use help with housekeeping. I really can use help with running errands. I really can use help with meal preparation. I really can use help with, and then you fill in the blank. The next one is your spiritual questions and concerns. Is to share them with someone who will understand and accept it. As I said earlier, a lot of the why me questions come up. As a chaplain, what I often hear is, well, Vaughn, if God has so much love for me, why would God allow this to happen? Or if Allah is the source of creation, why would Allah create this in my life? Share those spiritual questions and concerns, and know that it is okay to do that, because it's through our questioning that we're able to get answers. We're able to go further and to go deeper. And in those things that used to or still bring us joy and peace and sense of calmness, to do that. I shared earlier, I don't know if you can see behind me, there's actually the banner that's behind me is a woman that's doing a yoga pose. That is a practice that I have. It's a practice that gives me solace. It's a practice that allows me to be still. It's my time. It's my ritual. What is your ritual? What is your practice? whether it's a spiritual ritual. For some, the spiritual ritual is prayer, it's meditation, it's lighting of the candles, it's listening to music, it's reading devotionals, it's reading inspirational messages. What is your spiritual practice? What is it that gives you calmness and peace? The next is to not rush to make big decisions, like selling a home or moving. Now, I'm not saying not to do it or it doesn't need to happen. What I'm asking is that you don't rush to make that decision, because sometimes as caregivers, we panic. We have to do something, and we have to do something now. If you can, pause on making those big decisions, because as I said earlier, you have so many things going through our minds. We have to filter through some things before we make those major decisions. Journaling is another great practice. Journaling or writing a letter. So journaling is a way of putting down your thoughts, your feelings, but it's a way of doing it honestly. I mean, after all, unless you allow others to read it, it's just between you and that paper or that keyboard. Journaling is also has proven to be a form of release. So your journaling can be, today was a great day, or it can be, I am really angry, or I'm sad, or I'm confused, or I'm worried, or I'm concerned. That is a great form of release. Journaling or writing a letter. Now, I would venture to say that this is one that probably isn't used as much as people would like, and that is the ability to just relax, to just be still, to just sit and just breathe. There is something that's transformative that happens when we are still and we just take a breath. Because when we stop and we pause and we just take a breath, and we count to 3 or 5 or whatever, if we just take a breath, that forces us to be still. Another one is just a daydream. Allow your mind to just go and just drift. Which is followed by the next one, which is to allow yourself to just be. To be whatever, to be however, to just be. That may mean I may cry, I may yell, but you're allowing yourself to just be. Another is to create time for movement, to be active. Now, I know cleaning is usually may not be a favorite thing, but for some people, so I hear, it's not the case for me, but for some people, cleaning is exhilarating and they love it. Gardening is also a powerful one, because what happens if you've ever gardened or if you ever planted a seed? Have you noticed what happens with the seed? If all goes well, something blooms and it grows, and there's some delight in actually watching and paying attention to that seed as something blooms and grows. It also causes us to pause and notice the beauty that is around us. Now, rearranging a room, I know that may seem odd, but rearranging a room for some has actually been pretty healing. Has been a good strategy, because why? It's movement. I've been wanting to rearrange this living room and I haven't. You know what? I wonder how, if I move this sofa here, how it will look. Or I wonder if I've been looking at some paintings. I want to hang up these paintings so when I look at it, it makes me smile. Be creative in a space. Pick a designated space and make it your own. Diet and nutrition is another big one. And basically what that means is being mindful of what we put in our bodies. Being mindful of, am I eating too much comfort food? Being mindful of, oh, when I eat this, I really don't feel good. So just being aware. Again, exercise, doing something physical, movement. There's a shift that happens. So even if you step outside and let the sunshine hit your face and you walk around, there's something transformative, energetic that happens with that. And it doesn't have to be major movement, just move. Pray or meditate or go get a massage, go to a spa. Listen to music. And I mean really listen to the music. Let the notes go deeply within you. Let the words, listen to the lyrics. Really get into that music, that song that you're hearing, and let it just soothe you. Now, here's a creative one, is making a memory book. Now, a memory book can be, again, whatever you want to create, but it's a way of expressing your feelings. Some caregivers have created a memory book that's full of pictures. Not necessarily family pictures, but pictures from magazines or from books. And when they look at it, it just brings them joy. Or it can be a memory book of your life, anything. But let that be intentional to where it is something where you're allowed to express your feelings. And then again, the list. List things that you want or you need to do. To list those. And then remember, after you make that list, don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it. Another big one is setting limits. Now, there is power in the word no. Setting limits, setting boundaries, meaning not now, it's not time, it's too much. No. When you're feeling the demands and the pressures of life and the heaviness and people coming and asking and saying, I want, hesitate to say, no, not now. And of course, consider that you may need professional help, and that's okay too. And of all these things, I ask that you be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. And know that as caregivers, we literally take things one day at a time, or sometimes as moment by moment. And to know that that is okay as well. So there's a pyramid. Balance. How to live our lives in the balance. And you'll see the different squares. And I ask you, as you look at this pyramid, are you able to list the things that bring you joy? Do you have anything that just brings you joy? What about emotional well-being? Physical nourishment? Or, if it applies to you, a spiritual connection? Because again, we're whole body beings. Physical, mental, emotional, and for some, spiritual. So do you feel like you're living your life in balance in all of these areas? In a sense, Center of the pyramid, you see daily support activities. That's where I'm inviting you and encouraging you to create, to think of something daily that feeds into all of these areas, or at least one of these areas that you recognize, yeah, this creates a major stress for me, or this is how I'm experiencing stress. And at the bottom, you see lifelong foundations. Because see, living life on the balance means you're establishing that foundation, not just for today, but for today, tomorrow, the months, and the years to come. Because I would venture to say that for most of us, we don't know how long the caregiving process is. But by establishing these lifelong foundations, by looking at all of these areas in our lives, we're able to cope as we go through our day-to-day. So a plan. Let's look at how we can create a plan. So if you still have your pad, your pen, your pencil, paper, what have you, I'm going to ask you to look at some things. So rather than say, oh my gosh, there's so many things to tackle, let's narrow it down to one thing. And this is something that you can use, again, in all those areas of your lives that we talked about earlier. So this is just to kind of get you started and to get you thinking about a plan. So the first one, what's the one thing that you could do that you're not doing now, that if you do it on a regular basis, it'll cause a tremendous positive difference in your life? The one thing. And again, we don't want to think really big, right? What's the one thing that you could do? And it could be something that you used to do in the past and for whatever reason you've gotten away from it. It could be something that you've been wanting to try and you haven't. So think of that one thing that you could do that you're not already doing. I'm going to pause for a moment to give you time to think about that. Okay. So now as you have that in mind, here's some examples. The first one I hear a lot, I just need more sleep. I'm not sleeping, I'm too tired, I just need more sleep. Some people say, you know what, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start exercising, or I want to read a book, or I want to spend more time with who? So again, that one thing that you know will create a positive effect for you. Okay? The next step. So now how do we put that into practice? Because remember, self-care is a practice. It needs to be doable. Doable meaning realistic. I was talking to a caregiver, this was years ago, and we were trying to come up with this plan, and the caregiver said, I'm going to run 5 miles a day every day. And I looked at her and I said, really? Really? That's not realistic. So what's that one thing? And make it doable, make it measurable. So you're able to say, oh yeah, I did it. I did it. So you can make it happen. So for the person who said, I just need more sleep. Okay, well, is it feasible to say that maybe you could just start small, right? We're going to start small. Can you start going to bed maybe a half hour earlier, at least 3 times? At least 3 times this week, starting small. Or like I told you, the example of the person who said, well, I'm going to run 5 miles every day. That's not realistic, but maybe we can walk. Can you walk at least 20 minutes 3 times a week? Or if there's a book you've been wanting to read. Now, I know we have Kindle and e-books, and some people are going to the library, some are not because of COVID. So if it's not going to a library, or is it, your favorite errand or something you like to do, are you able to put aside 15 minutes at least 3 times a week where you're able to concentrate and focus on that one thing? Or if there's someone you've been wanting to see and you haven't been able to see them because you've just been busy, but when you're around them, you're just so happy and they make you smile, are you able to have a meal with them? Are you able to at least talk to them on the phone or spend time with them? And again, measurable and doable. So is this something that you're able to do, say, once a month for the next 3 months? Can you do that? So let's go back and review. So think of the one thing that you want to do. Not too big, but whenever you do it, it makes you smile, it makes you happy. Think of that one thing. And then the plan. How are you going to do it? Is it measurable? Is it doable? Is it also realistic? Are you able to go ahead and do it? And I want to add something else to that. Are you okay giving yourself permission to do it? Because giving yourself permission to do this one thing means you may have to say no to some other things. Are you okay doing that? And then the last step 3 is, well, this is possibly what can happen. So that person said, I'm so tired, I just can't seem to get enough rest, and they decided that they were going to go to bed a little early. They may end up feeling well rested. You may find yourself having more energy. You may find that when you're still for that moment, that you were able to just escape. Or maybe have great conversations with the person or the people that you just haven't kept in touch with them or connected with them. And before we go to the chat and some questions, I want to read this to you. So yesterday is gone. Tomorrow has not yet come. We have only today. So let us begin. Yesterday is gone, meaning we can't redo it, right? So I hope that the days of beating ourselves up, I hope that the days of the guilt, I hope that the days of the heaviness, I hope that they will truly be lifted for you. Tomorrow has not yet come. I hope that your tomorrow will be the day where you know that it is okay for you to focus on you. That it is okay to give yourself permission to take care of yourself and to do what you need to do with the understanding that it is for your good. And then we have only today, meaning let each day from today on be moments where you're able to pause, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, and create that open time, that open space that is just for you. Because you see, it's during those moments that we pause that we're able to rest and renew and replenish ourselves in order to renew ourselves for what is to come. And I am going to, here we go. And so again, I want to say, I don't know if we have any questions or anything else before I continue, but I do want to say that I recognize that for some, it took a lot to carve out this time in your lives as caregivers. I recognize that for some, you didn't know what to expect from this webinar, and I hope that you were able to take away some tips. More importantly, I hope that you were able to recognize that self-care is a practice. Self-care is actually essential, and that it affects our whole being. And then rather than feel like you have to address or need to address all of these things, just chip away one bit at a time. If you are interested in receiving a copy of this PowerPoint with the tips and all of that, I think Jessica can address that as far as how we can get a copy to you. So Jessica, do we have any questions or anything that come up in the chat?
Yep, we do have a question. One question
Okay.
is, how do you balance the risk of COVID with knowing this could be your last Thanksgiving?
Ooh, yes. So what I would suggest is this: prioritize what is your need during this time, whether we're talking about Thanksgiving or the other holidays that are coming. What is the need? Is the need to be with family and loved ones? And then obviously come up with creative ways to do that. I've heard people doing virtual Thanksgiving. I don't know if you all have heard that term. This is obviously is a new concept, where rather than having everybody come to your house or you gather at one place, you set aside designated times for family eating periods. So you meet with a group, with a family member over your appetizer. Then you do a different group over your meal, a different group over your dessert. What I also ask you to do is to be mindful of fear. See, COVID has caused a lot of fear to rise up in people, the fear of the unknown and the fear of the what ifs. And I encourage each and every one of us to still live out our traditions, as I talked about earlier. Make the tradition of Thanksgiving or whatever the holiday is, make it meaningful, so you're still able to experience life, but just do it differently. Is there another question or comment, Jessica?
We had Skip and Nancy share that their foundation is love God and love our neighbor.
So as I said earlier, as especially as a chaplain, so thank you for that comment. We have to find those things that are meaningful for us and those things that replenish and renew us. For some, it is our faith traditions, our faith beliefs. So my question, and not that you necessarily need to respond to this, but something for you to think about. If it is love God, love neighbor, and that is where you find your strength, then how are you building upon that? How are you loving God or showing your love for God? How are you loving your neighbor? Because see, if we live those out, especially as our foundation, that gives us the inner strength and the peace that we need to help us as we continue the practice of self-care. So awesome, great. Is there another one, Jessica?
I don't see any other questions. What I can do is, well, one I wanted to answer, this PowerPoint or this presentation is being recorded, so we will share the recording, and we can get you the PowerPoint with the exercises as well. If you want to contact your regional program manager, we'll have copies that we can distribute out as requested or as needed and wanted. What I'm going to do now is I can unmute. I have everybody muted right now, but I'm going to unmute for you to ask any questions. We still have about 10 minutes on this platform for anybody who has questions or anybody who wants to share anything. Okay, so right now you are unmuted. So feel free to make a comment or ask a question.
My name is Curtis, and I'm new to this. This has been 2 years since my wife's diagnosis, and I'm certainly glad I hooked up today. This gave me a lot of insight, and I realize I'm not treating myself real good, and I'm going to have to make a plan and kind of, go by it. But sometimes I think people don't realize the individual burden that it puts on a person, fatigue-wise and appetite-wise and that kind of stuff. And that's all I got to say right now. But it's nice to meet you folks, and I hope it all works out good for you.
Well, and Curtis, I want to say that, first of all, thank you for your honesty. As I said several times during the presentation, we tend to think we're just fine, right? Because after all, we're fulfilling our duty, we're doing what is asked or not asked of us as caregivers, and we just go through the motion. And it's not until we're actually asked to stop and truly look and go deep within that we realize, wait a minute, perhaps I'm not doing as well as I thought.
You're absolutely right. That is absolutely, hit the nail on the head. I've been looking out for 2 years without looking in.
Yeah.
And I can see the wear and tear on me, and the frustration that comes along with it.
Well, again, and I appreciate that, and I'm curious, and I'm trying to read the chat. Thank you, Jackie. I see your answer. So, yeah, the whole virtual Thanksgiving is different, but it's just a different way of making that time special and meaningful. So I'm wondering, was anybody surprised at how they scored?
Yeah,
with
me.
those 12 questions? Because think about it, there were only 12 questions, right? So initially it's like, 12 questions, yes or no. And then the more we're answering no, it's like, wait a minute. And the whole point of that exercise really is to recognize, perhaps I need to make me a priority. Because part of the balancing, the life pyramid balance, is recognizing, yes, I'm a caregiver, but I need to make that time. It's essential. I have to make that time to also make me a priority. And that plan is a way of establishing how to make me or you a priority. So excellent. Were there any other surprises, any other thoughts as you went deep within as your role as caregivers?
Well, let me see.
Did you struggle with coming up with the plan? I'm kind of curious if anyone would like to share something that they used to do, but they got away from it, and now they're thinking, I'm going to try it.
Well, I'll be real honest with you. I used to train 4 or 5 times a week for about an hour at a time, and it's something I really used to look forward to. And I haven't been able to do that for the last couple of years because I need to be here. That getting away part is the hard part. That hour a day is kind of hard to come up with sometimes. And the day off a week, I don't know how I'm going to manage that.
But here's the thing. You're at least thinking about it. We all are.
Yeah. trying to figure out a way of doing it.
So if it's the swimming and I'm moving my head intentionally because you can see what mine is behind me, which is the yoga.
Yeah.
So if we can manage, right? But the first step is to give ourselves permission to even do it.
Yeah, that kind of surprised me. I never even thought of it in that manner.
Yeah. Giving permission means we're saying it's okay. It's okay for me to take care of myself. It's okay for me to do my swimming. It's okay for me to walk. And so, as you recall, when I said once we figure out what that is, what we need, right? I said, a suggestion is, well, let's make a list of the needs. So once we make that list, what is it that we need to do to make it doable? Do I need to ask for help? Is there a way that someone can come so I can take a break? And even if that break means I'm just going to go for a drive, I'm just going to sit outside, finding ways to replenish ourselves. So good. Were there any other? I'm sorry, Curtis. Go ahead.
I got to learn to say no more often and ask for help more often.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe have somebody come over and spend the day with my wife while I take a day off, or take her someplace and drop her off with a relative or something for a while. That's my plan right now. I mean, I've got everything wrote down. I'm going to sit down and go through it again and make up a plan that I can look at and visualize, in writing in front of me, maybe post it on the fridge or something.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing exactly what we were hoping, is to at least start thinking differently.
Well, thank you.
Just start thinking differently. Did anyone else have any other thoughts or comments or surprises? Did anyone have a hard time coming up with even something to do as part of their plan? Did anyone, when I went over the physical, mental, emotional, and spirit, was there anything that jumped out at you? Hi, Manson. Hi. Was anyone like, oh, I had no idea that stress can affect me in this way? Most of the time, yeah.
Well, I've been recently going to the doctors, and I had a leave of absence for a period of time, and due to the stress and what it did to me. So I'm very aware of how much the stress can affect you. Tomorrow is my last day of work, so I'm going to try to put into play a new plan to help me to be able to get everything done around the house and to be able to give myself more time to, at least while I can. Because right now, my husband's at the point where he can be left, alone for a little bit of time, or I have, my daughter, my son here that can help out. So I want to be able to start putting into plan where I have more time to myself and take care of the exercise that I need to do and the quiet time and the different things the doctor had suggested. So this was very good.
Terry, that's great. And I want to, first of all, commend you and congratulate you on doing that, because it takes boldness for a lot. It takes courage to recognize what you need to do and then to put the steps into place. So I'm glad to hear that. I'm sorry about the way things transpired for you, but I can only imagine how it's going to be affirming for you once you start putting those things in place and putting aside those things that get in the way of your self-care. And it sounds like work was getting in the way of self-care. And so you've opened up that space and you've created space to be able to do what you need for you. So congratulations to you, Terry.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Vonshelle.
And I'm looking at the time. I see it's 3:30, so I don't know if, Jessica, if we have time for any more or what you would like to do at this point.
We have time for one more question or comment. Tina, I think you wanted to.
Yeah, if I may. Vonshelle, I just wanted to say, my name is Tina Duane. I'm the Regional Program Manager for Southeast Florida. And this webinar, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, to talk to our pals, our pals. They're almost the unforgotten heroes. And I know when we see their loved ones at clinics, we see them as well. And sometimes it's hard to address their needs or be able to, bring to the forefront maybe what they're going through. So just this webinar alone is so helpful, and we'll have those tools now to share with them when we see something that maybe we don't feel comfortable bringing up in front of their loved one. So I just want to thank you for what you do and for taking the time to do this and make this available. I see quite a few of my folks on here, and I'm very excited for that. I just want to thank you so much.
Well, Tina, you're very welcome, and I appreciate it. I truly, I work with Marixa a lot in my area, and it's always, I'm just always in awe of our caregivers. I really am. And they're not only the heroes, but they're the silent heroes. They tend to sit back and they're taking in and handling so much, and it's often unknown. So I appreciate this dedicated time for caregivers, and again, I'm just very, very appreciative and very honored to be able to do this with you all.
Well, thank you again, Vaughn. Thank you, everybody, for joining the call. I know everybody on the call has something to take away. Be kind to yourselves. Give yourselves a hug, because you are the heroes, and we really appreciate everything that you do. And at the end of the day, I hope you know that you're not in this fight alone. We're here to support you. And we're sending you all of our love and support. So thank you so much. Vaughn, thank you. Wow, what a great presentation. And we'll get
You're
the
welcome,
recording out
everyone.
to everybody.
Take care. Take care. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.